for leaks. Now that the bags are fully inflated, Josette ordered. Then we'll spin up the steam jack. Sergeant Jutes repeated the order, shouting it back along the keel from his station at the top of the companionway. In the narrow spaces between gas bags, riggers crept like spiders across a web of lines and plywood box girders. Between frames, they climbed out onto longitudinal girders of questionable integrity, their backs squeezed against the inside of the canvas envelope as they checked the outer faces of the bags. Such a thorough inspection prior to starting up the steam jack was not routine, but neither was carrying inflammable air. As the name implied, it had the nasty habit of igniting at the slightest pretext. 5-inch hole in bag 3, Sarge, a feminine voice called from the other side of the ship's canvas skin, directly above the hurricane deck. Jutes repeated the report, shouting it down the companionway and swapping in a "sir" at the end. Josette heard another report from far aft, but couldn't make it out. Jutes relayed it as, "Foot-long tear in bag 8, sir." "Multiple holes in 4, called a masculine yet strangely high-pitched voice from amidships. "Is that bad?" Bernat asked. "The furnace is under bag 4, Josette answered, turning to face aft. Bernat tapped his chin as he made a show of thinking about it. "The furnace? You mean that lumpy tangle of metal beneath the boiler? The one with all the bullet holes in it?" "The same," Josette said. "Ensign Kember, you have the deck." "Ballast coming aft." She started up the companionway. Bernat followed her up the companionway and called, "2 ballasts coming aft." She thought his voice had a slightly higher pitch inside the keel than in the open air of the hurricane deck. She turned and cast an inquiring look at him. "Is it my imagination or—" "Oh dear," he said, clearly recognizing the change in pitch of her voice, too. "Does that mean what I think it does?" "I'm afraid it does. We're soaking in inflammable air." She looked to Private Gray, the mechanic's mate. "Quench the boiler fire. Riggers recheck all fire screens and tarps. Make sure they're tied securely." The riggers hardly needed telling. They were already on their way down, and as they arrived they set to inspecting the fabric screens that separated the keel, at the very bottom of the superstructure, from the gas bags above it. Josette knelt by the boiler and inspected its furnace. The smaller punctures had been patched with clay, but 6 holes were too big for that, and so were covered by a protective wire mesh, held in place with solder. She peered through a mesh screen. Inside the furnace, the paraffin flames sputtered out, but the fuel nozzle remained red-hot, and the forest of tubes that ran up through the furnace to feed water into the steam drum were speckled with burning embers. And it wasn't only the furnace that could ignite the ship. Here, a mile in the air aboard a floating powder keg, 12 possible ignition sources occurred to her, all of which had seemed insignificant on the ground. There were the loose flints in the small arms locker, the metal tools used on the steam jack, the rigging lines run through blocks with iron bearings. Even Bernat's frippery might cause a static spark that was quite sufficient to blow them all to hell. All the more reason for him to start dressing sensibly. "Don't take off your jacket," she said, looking up at him. Bernat beamed a smile and said, "It's quite stylish, isn't it? I didn't think you'd notice." He ran his hands across the green velvet and filigreed buttons. "Don't ruffle it, either. You could cause a spark." As Bernat recognized her meaning, the disappointment rose on his face in proportion to his earlier joy. "I'm sorry to inform you that I can't help causing sparks," he said. "It's in my nature." But it was not to be Bernat or his clothing which would ignite the inflammable air. The chain of disaster began where Josette had first suspected it, inside the furnace, where inflammable air was...